Okay, perhaps we can start. I mean, everyone's talking about AI, but good to understand from your view how significant you think is the AI data center market in the UK at the moment. And I mean, there's a lot of activity, I think, in the Northeast. Is that the only place where it's happening, or are there other areas where these gigawatt factories are planned? Yeah, just give us some idea.
Yeah, I've seen the latest news on that, and yeah, the AI data center market in the UK is hugely significant. In my opinion, that recent US-UK tech prosperity deal saw both countries cooperate on both AI, quantum computing, and nuclear energy, with an estimated of around 150 billion of investment. NVIDIA actually highlighted that the UK is currently, their quote from it was that the UK is currently at the big bang of the AI era, and UK stands at this Goldilocks position where world-class talent and research meets industry coverage. The announcements that followed were focused primarily on the Northeast. So it was Blythe and the Cobalt Park near Newcastle were given AI growth zone status. It's where we're already seeing Blackstone commit to their 10 billion hyperscale facility through QTS. However, this is now UK's second AI growth zone, second to Cobham in Oxfordshire, which was the first designated area of the AI Opportunities Action Plan and was put forward by the UK government. So looking forward, I think we're likely to see further hotspots develop around areas where there's power and talent. I expect growth zones to emerge in sites in Scotland, Wales, and the Northeast to be announced over the next coming years.
Okay, and one thing this AI data center sort of expansion, explosion, whatever you want to call it, is serving to highlight is the power infrastructure challenges. I guess they already exist because, the digital world is putting pressure on. But simply put, there's not enough capacity, at least going forward. So we're looking at significant expansion, upgrading of the network required. Is that the reality of the situation?
Yeah, most definitely. Actually, I remember presenting on the need for grid infrastructure across Europe, even before we saw the ChatGPT moment in 2022 when AI applications saw this mainstream adoption. I remember saying then, highlighting before 2021, that grid upgrades needed significant investment, not just in the UK, but across Europe. A third of grid infrastructure in Europe is over 40 years old. Okay, the average age of electricity transformers is 63 years old. The National Energy System Operator, NESO, has recently announced that 58 billion is needed in the UK to support the electricity grid and meet their decarbonisation goals by 2035. Back then, I highlighted that the main issue was a transmission problem rather than an energy generation problem. There were significant power bottlenecks, particularly around where the core data center markets were, Slough, for example, in the UK. This is an area that still needs to be addressed, transmission. We saw Ofgem approve to overhaul 2,734 miles of existing overhead lines in order to double the amount of power the grid can transfer. And we saw the AI Energy Council established as part of the AI Opportunities Action Plan to help manage the growing energy needs of both AI and data centers while still meeting the country's clean energy targets.
Yeah, I mean, how big a problem? There clearly is a disjoint between the demand for data center capacity and what's available. And I think if you look at the chart, the gap between power and data center capacity gets wider, at least over the next few years. I mean, how big a problem are we going to see data centers not getting built, being significantly delayed because there's not enough power, or is action being taken quickly enough to mean that that's not going to be a problem?
Yeah, I very much so. They're taken now, but over the last 2 years, we've seen demand exceed supply. So we've now had 6 consecutive quarters where demand has been higher than the new supply added from a data center point of view. And the core markets in both the US and Europe are now seeing vacancy rates fall to record lows. In London has now fallen to around 7.6%. In the US, it's even more acute, where vacancies has fell to around 2.3%. And in both cases, nearly all new construction is fully pre-leased now before it's due to come online, leaving very little short-term relief for new tenants. As a result, we're seeing really long lead times for businesses looking for new and immediate capacity. and forward planning to secure future data center space is now critical. We're seeing several countries now address the planning backlog around it. So in the UK, we've shifted energy grid connections have now shifted from a first come first serve model to a first ready first connected system. The change was led by NESO and the Ofgem, but it's designed to clear a really major backlog of speculative projects and then prioritize those that are ready for immediate development.
Okay, and I believe microgrids and everyone talking about small scale nuclear, which is going to happen at some stage. That I guess they will gain in importance to address some of this grid shortfall. But how quickly can those assets? Because I think small scale nuclear is potentially not going to happen until the next decade. But just your thoughts, I suppose, as to how much microgrids, small scale nuclear, and any other sort of alternative energy resources can help with this shortfall of power for data centers, obviously in particular.
Yeah, most definitely. It that shares my thoughts on it as well. So microgrids can integrate renewable energy with battery storage systems, and we see that as a more practical near-term solution, particularly in those remote areas or where grid connection timelines are far too long or costly. However, the regulatory framework is still rather outdated. It's not kept in line with building out these, and there's significant red tape for even a small-scale microgrid, even in the UK. We highlighted SMRs in our 2025 Global Data Center Report. We had seen a number of agreements made between hyperscalers and SMR companies. 2024 and 2025, we see a number of really high scale agreements between the hyperscalers and small modular nuclear reactor companies. However, we still don't expect to see the first commercial deployment of an SMR for a data center until at least 2030.
Okay, and alongside the overall power shortage, but there are potentially some parts of the UK where power is a bit more available than in others, if I can put it like that. So do you think we're going to see other data center? I know, I mean, whenever I talk to the folks in Scotland, they're very sort of positive that they've got plenty available, loads of renewable power, etc. So just your thoughts. Like, clearly there are other issues, impacting latency and stuff, but assuming that time isn't critical for people, do you think there will be other locations just where there is more available power, so data centers might get built there?
Most definitely. 100%. We're already seeing the shift towards bringing the data center to the power approach over the last couple of years, and Scotland's a really good example. It's good that you highlight that, because it's a country that generates more renewable energy than it actually consumes. So it's developing data centers in Scotland is much more efficient than moving power south. But new transmission capacity is still required to move it there. Actually, there's a really good example as well, because it can highlight the Eastern Green Link projects. So it's a series of high voltage direct current submarine cables that connect Scotland with demand centres around England. We see EGL Eastern Green Link 1 begins construction this year, with a route that connects East Lothian to County Durham, so in the northeast. But there's about 4 of these projects that are due to start over the next couple of years. I know there's a connection also with Scotland that goes down to East Anglia as well in the UK.
And I suppose the other thing to inquire, I mean, bearing in mind what we've chatted about so far, what's the balance in terms of future data center development? I mean, London and the southeast traditionally, obviously, where everyone wants to be. But the rest of the UK maybe is becoming more attractive. So is London, the southeast, still where everyone wants to be if they can be, or just give us some thoughts as to the southeast versus the rest of the UK, if you like.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think London and Slough will remain the heart of the data center industry in the UK, just because of its proximity to the financial sector, the population base, and the fact that you've got the major network connections there as well, the dense fiber optic cabling. However, for AI and large hyperscale campuses, we're now seeing that surge in regional hubs, particularly in the north, and northeast is a really good example there. This has a huge impact on the potential regional clusters, as digital infrastructure is also a magnet for economic growth, job creation, and just extending that high-speed connectivity and low latency services evenly across the UK, and not just in the capital.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, I mean, at the moment, everyone's talking about AI and the large language models, so these gigawatt type data centers. But as I understand it, once well, not once, but when a lot of that's being done, then the inferencing happens, and we're needing perhaps more data centers closer to where the applications, the data is going to be consumed, etc. So, any thoughts, I suppose, as to gigawatt facilities versus edge facilities over time? How you see that developing?
Yeah, we're actually doing a big project on this for our 2026 Outlook reports, because AI inference is going to be a huge area within what we're seeing develop AI, how AI is developing. So the vast majority of it has been in AI training models and the large scale data centers that are required then. But we think in the next couple of years, AI inference will overtake the amount of demand that we're seeing for data centers, overtake the megawatts needed for training. And we think by 2030, it's going to be significantly more. And it has a huge commercial application on it. But I think the what we're seeing there is it has a huge impact on where we're seeing data centers deployed, like you said. So where AI models need a large scale training facility and where they're deployed, we'll need edge data centers that will interact in real time to real data. And these will need to be located, you said, close to the end user for low latency, continuous workload. However, there will be less computational intensive. I think there'll be some of it will be done through the cloud, but it will be when we start to see applications that are where AI needs to be always on, or where we see applications where it needs incredibly low latency. So where they need the physical infrastructure very close to the urban population is where we start to see both a threat and an opportunity to the data center sector.
Okay, and in terms of the technologies that are enabling this AI boom, if you like, everyone's talking about liquid cooling, and there are various ways of doing that, obviously, to cope with the higher and higher compute density. Is that the only sort of technology, or are you seeing any other technology trends alongside that are enabling these newer types of data center?
Yeah, we're seeing instances now of immersive cooling go into the pipeline. So data center developer ICS has partnered with actually a UK firm, XDS, to deliver 10 megawatts of immersion cooled data centers in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. So we're now seeing that evolution of liquid cooling happening from what we initially see now as the rear door heat exchange through to where we're seeing direct to chip. We've got a few examples of that. But now we're seeing immersion cooling now kind of emerge as that latest technology on there and applicable for those really high rack densities. We're also seeing AI being used for automation optimization in data centers. So we're now seeing intelligent cooling management and workload balancing as well. So we're now seeing AI being used within data centers in order to optimize cooling and workload there.
Okay, and in terms of the UK data center market moving forward, I mean, it looks as if it's going to continue to be quite buoyant and expanding, etc. But are there, and clearly we've discussed the fact that different locations might be used to help that expansion, to go where the power is. But is there any concern that there are other sort of countries or regions sort of better placed for these data centers, which where it doesn't matter so much, where the location is? Is there any danger that UK might miss out on some data center expansion because of this power, bottleneck, where other countries are not so, constricted, if you like? Is there any signs of that or not?
I don't think it will miss out. I think the wave of unprecedented AI investments is quite significant, and I think the UK is actually rather ahead in terms of the game with its AI action plan already in place, the development of AI growth zones as well, and now being factored in the grid planning reform as well. I think it's ahead in terms of some of the other core European markets in terms of getting this ready and having a plan in place in order for that significant expansion. However, there's still significant work to be done, and definitely grid capacity increases are definitely needed. AI infrastructure, as you probably mentioned there as well, is increasingly location flexible, as we saw with OpenAI's choice of Norway for its 520 megawatt European Stargate facility. It's located in the very north of the country where it's got access to abundant hydropower. However, as per NVIDIA's comment as well, the UK has the edge when in terms of that convergence of world-class talent and industry coverage, which I think sets it apart from its other kind of competitors in the market.
Okay, and I mean, slightly flippant last comment, but death taxes, which are regrettably we might find out in a couple of weeks when the budget happens in the UK at least, but and data center expansion, life's three certainties. You can't see any clouds on the horizon. Data centers are going to continue to expand for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think yeah. I think the question is, I think most certainly, I think it's I can't foresee. I think data center expansion. I think the only roadblocks is terms of getting it built. I think is kind of the major one. Having access to the grid connection, having being able to build as fast as they need to. I think that's the. I think the question is just now where and just how fast it's going to be. So AI adoption is accelerating. That's not going to stop, and cloud migration continues as well. AI deployments are multiplying. So every trend points to more data generation and not less. But despite every conceivable constraint that we're seeing now with power shortages, planning delays, supply chain issues as well. Let's not forget the last 3 years or so has seen significant supply chain issues when it comes to delivering the materials for data centers. Europe has still more than 3 gigawatts of data center capacity that is currently in development. So despite all of those conceivable constraints, the pipeline is still enormous.
Okay, I mean, it's been great as ever to chat to you. Thanks so much for sharing your insights into what's going on. It's clearly exciting times for the industry. So, and we'll obviously look forward to that 20. I don't know when's the 2026 report come out, because obviously it'd be good to follow that up. But
yeah, we're aiming for the end of December for that.
okay, lovely. Yeah, so perhaps we can touch base then. But at least for now, Daniel, thanks so much for your time. Thank you.